Hello, darlings, and welcome to our second episode of Keeping Up with the Kensingtons. I'm, of course, your host, Lord Simon Kensington. Tonight, we have all sorts of wonderful, scandalous things to talk about, and, as always, I will be taking your questions. So, before we get too further along, I would like to welcome you all to this second episode. It has been an utter pleasure performing the first one for you, and this second one promises to be 4 times as great because we work in exponentials, darling. Are you kidding? Makeup, clothes, the man, it's a force multiplier. So, as I've said before, so many wonderful things have happened, so many terrible, tragic things have happened, and scandal is around every corner. So, without any further ado, let's start talking, shall we? I do, of course, take questions from the audience, all of you out there in the ether. So, should anyone have, in the course of this... Good Lord, Melissa, the camera fell over again! I swear to God, if you do not fix this immediately, I will tan your hide with that switch. No, up here, up to the other left. Good, just give it here. My apologies. Technical difficulties. One cannot seriously trust a ghoul nowadays to do the simplest of tasks. You cow! My apologies. All I wanted was perfection. Is that too much to ask? Really? It's all wonky. Look at this terrible setup. Now, what are you even doing? Thank you. Kindly. Thank you. Now that we're back, Melissa. Almost made me smudge my makeup. Again, I will be taking questions, so if you have any, please send them post-haste. I'd be most interested to answer them. But some of you were kind enough to send in some requests on topics and questions in general. So let's start out with those, shall we? First come, first serve. So, one young neonate has asked what a brouhaha can do to avoid the common stereotypes of iconoclasts and be the more warrior scholars that they were once known as outside of the clan elder's opinion. First off, whoever you are, as all of these questions are anonymous, kudos on asking what you want to hear from someone outside of your clan elders. Well, it's a good thing this is anonymous, otherwise I'm quite sure that the next rant would be as deadly as the last one. But to answer your question, I do remember a time when the brouhaha were known as warrior scholars and not quite so leather-clad and bikerish as is wont these days to see. It is heart-wrenching to see such a noble and prestigious clan fall so very short of its utter potential. However, there is always hope. And there are a great many scholar brouhaha out there. Warriors, even, if you will. Can you hear Sterling through the door, dear? I have fed him. He just wants to be in where Daddy is. We'll get to that later. My great-great-great-great-grandchild bought me 2 cats to help me deal with the ennui of the ages. I found them furry. They've left fur everywhere, over everything. Everything I own is covered in cat fur. But damn it if they're not a little endearing. More to the point, and to answer your question, young neonate of some unknown provenance. There are many elder brouhaha, and even some younger ancilla neonates, who are warrior scholars in very, very rigid terms. I remember a day in Rome when Clan brouhaha would walk the night streets with us, and they would debate philosophy and economics and the ideas of ideas and what makes a man true and what it is to think on the idea of thinking. And these were all fantastic prose that they would share with all of us. And then the next night, should the occasion arise, Sword in hand, they would be off and across the field, slicing down the enemies of Rome, slicing down the enemies of all manner of creatures of the night. But those were simpler and far better times, and that was long ago and far away. So, to answer your question, what can you do? Ironically, the best thing you could do is exactly what you want to do. You are a clan, unlike many others. You are the fiery, burning passion of the Camarilla. You are the spirit of the tower. And that fiery passion does not lend itself to being immutable. Nay, in fact, I would say that change is your very prerogative. So I would say embrace it. Don't allow stuffy elders stuck away in high-towered libraries dictate what you should do with your unlife. I mean, of course, unless there's some other force that they can impose upon you that would say otherwise. But then again, these are the nights we live in. Let's see. My opinion on Ravnos and whether or not they still qualify as a clan. That's a very strange question. Now, I do remember a time, many, many nights ago, when the Ravnos were less than reputable. And I will say that stereotypes do exist for a reason. However, do I believe the Ravnos are still truly a clan? Of course they are. They have their own loving mother or father. I suppose I don't really know who the progenitor of your line is. Notwithstanding, you have your own. You breed true. When you embrace, you take one and you make him like yourself. And really, that is the definition of any true clan. Absolutely. And I do believe that there is a place for you amongst the tower where you are a more cohesive unit, able to build yourselves together into a real force to be reckoned with. Let us get to the next question. The various Toreador houses and the roles they play through the clan. This was interesting as it was actually linked to another question later on, and I think I can actually answer both of these questions in one fell swoop, if you will let me. Clan Toreador, unlike our beautiful and wonderful counterparts over in the Clan of Kings, Clan Toreador is less about what lineage from which we descend, and more about those things that we create, which is to say, our art. Now myself, I have taken on many forms of art over the time. My first form actually was oration, my ability to speak publicly, my ability to sway a crowd with my debating skills. I was quite the cunning linguist. Having said that, I've picked up many forms of art over the years, and many of them have taken favor from time to time over one or the other. Currently, I am a blood vintner, so if anyone is interested in trying one of my delightful blends, and I have been at this for some time, so please, you can expect quality from a Kensington. I'll get to the click, love. As I was saying, I've taken on blood vintning, wonderful ability to blend blood with wine, preserve both of them, and make it a palatable drink for our kind. I have made several specialized blends for those of a more rarefied taste, including my friends and loved ones over in Clan Ventru. I do special orders, I do parties, I do large orders. I am quite the connoisseur of wine. And as such, I've been able to procure a rather large winery and I'm currently in the process of bottling my 2014 vintage. It is easily one of the most exquisite reds I have ever produced. My 13 was good, and my 12 was fantastic, but this 14, it rolled around on the tongue. But I digress. Where is my mind nowadays? At any rate, Clan Toreador is not defined by its lineages. We are defined by our art. And our art is further defined by the guilds upon which we create that art. Now, as we all know, there are posers, there are neonates and neophytes in an art form, and then of course there are masters, those who have taken the art form and created something that has never been seen before, something new, something amazing, and they can truly be said to be the pinnacle of that art. And those who have reached the apex of their mastery, of course, are very troubled individuals, as they have never thought themselves ever able to create something beautiful and lasting, and really it is that struggle that drives them. But they will inevitably aggregate around them other artists, and those artists will want to learn, and those artists will try to emulate the master, and the master will guide them if he is wont to do, if he feels as though they are worth sharing the skills that he has spent hundreds of years defining and perfecting. If he finds worth there, then he will share with them his art. Thus a guild, where we learn to perfect our art as time goes on. And that is the definition. So what is the purpose of the Toreador within the Toreador? Is the soul of the tower. We are its being. We are its humanity. We are its culture, its grace, its decorum. We are the Camarilla. And we must stand as shining examples of what can be achieved. And we must not let those forces outside the tower, those forces that lie in shadows, that lie and worship false gods, try to tear us down with their filth and their degradation. Because we are beautiful. We are light, and we are the Ivory Tower. And we, the Toreador, are its very heart and soul. So, the next question I have: how do we resolve conflicts between houses within the Toreador, my apologies, and as conflict will always exist outside of the houses between clans, how do we... Okay, I see what you're saying. Oh, a newcomer. Who is this now? Of all the art forms available to you, why did you choose to express your passions through the creation of blood wine? Well, now, that is an interesting question. When I was a few centuries younger, I had made a series of poor decisions in my life, and it had left me rather in a dark place. But there was one person who stood by me through all of it, and who lifted me up, who pulled me up from that dark and dirty place, where I thought that all hope and light was gone from my life. And she asked me what I wanted to do. And if I could do it all over again, what would I do differently? If I could get away, start fresh. And I told her I've always been a fan of wine. Growing up where I did, my mother, beautiful woman, had acres and acres of grapevines from which we made wine for Rome. And I always remember how happy that made her, to toil in the sand and the earth. And it was a very sandy place, but the grapevines were very hearty. She was so happy because she knew so many people would enjoy that fruit of her labor, no pun intended, later on. I suppose becoming a blood vintner was a way for me to reconnect with my humanity, a way for me to find myself out of that dark place, to bring myself back. And sometimes even now, millennia later, I still think of her, toiling out there in the fields, pulling those grapes. She didn't have to, of course. She was a noble woman of noble birth, but brought her so much joy to do so. And I was hoping that perhaps that sort of thing could be in my blood still, and that I could toil in that field, and maybe I could remember what it was like to be that happy again. I'm sorry, I digress here. So, how do we resolve conflicts between different houses within clans? Well, that is an interesting question, and I'm sure every clan has its own form of justice. Is a good way to put that, I think. Why, within the clan Toreador, we have our ways of dealing with with inter-guild rivalries, is a good way to put it. So, should one become a bit too big for their britches, I believe is the term, there are ways that we can settle such disagreements safely, dignified, without having to resort to violence or some other deplorable act. But how do we reduce tensions within those of the same clan? Well, quite frankly, you need commonality with anyone. That's the first rule of debate. The first rule of oration states, you must find common ground with your audience. This is how any leader leads. This is how any two people find happiness being friends with one another. This is how people resolve differences. You find commonality. You don't immediately default to the beast inside your blood. You do not immediately default to the lies that it will tell you, of hate, of betrayal, of scorn. You must fight that beast inside you and rise above. That is the only way that we can reduce tensions. That is the only way that we can find peace between members of the same clan or inter-clan. We must find that commonality. And to be quite frank, if we were able to find some degree, as minute as it may be, of commonality with the thrice-damned Sabbat, then I believe we could find commonality with anyone. Good question. So, my audience seems tellingly quiet this afternoon. This evening? Evenings. Far past afternoon. So, I am opening it up to the floor. If there are any questions, please ask now. Otherwise, let's start spilling some tea. So, for those of you that are not currently in the know, you must be living under a rock, because the New Year's Eve rant in Chicago, held by one Sigrid, was an utter success. Ooh, save for the minor detail of the death of an elder prince. I'm going to say that again with emphasis. An elder prince of the Camarilla went to Chicago to enjoy the hospitality of the Prince of Chicago, one Sigrid of the True North, or as the other elders within the Camarilla like to call her, Sigrid of I Forgot Canada was a place. Regardless, she comes, this prince, to enjoy the hospitality of another prince, and while in that prince's domain is murdered. let that wash over you. Let that sink in. And if it doesn't form a rock-hard pit in the bottom of your heart, I'd wager your humanity is very, very waning. What sort of prince would allow another esteemed prince to come to their domain and not even have the commonality, not even have the courtesy to provide them with protection? That would allow them to be swept away? Oh, I didn't know that she was gone. Until, of course, the murder most foul. Now, for those of you that don't know, it is a dear, dear, beautiful soul, Cornelia, of House Everard, of the clan of Kings, and grandchild to their luminary Desmond Aldred of House Everard, of the clan of Kings. Desmond's grandchild, the Prince of, I want to say, Toronto or Ontario. Haven't been to Canada in forever. Regardless, a prince of that wonderful, the Great White North, comes to Chicago and gets ganked while enjoying the hospitality. Montreal, thank you, my dear. Montreal, the Prince of Montreal goes to visit the Prince of Chicago and gets got. Well, I've heard that Chicago is a wonderfully windy city. The murder capital of the world, if I'm not grossly mistaken at this point, and, well, I believe Sigrid has taken to the depredations of her hometown with perhaps a little too much fervor. I could not tell you the absolute shame, the absolute, there's a word for this in English. In German they call it Gaugenschnatzesbart. It means, roughly translated, to be so ashamed as to cut out one's own heart. Which, quite frankly, I would be that ashamed. If I were the prince of some wonderful city, and another fellow prince of the Camarilla, an elder of some repute and standing, comes to my city and gets killed under my watch, I would best walk my happy, tight little buns straight into the morning light than to have to face a luminary elder of Clan Ventru who is ever so upset at the loss of his favored grandchild. Of course, to my understanding, since this whole event has been wrapped up, Sigrid has, of course, sent some people to look into it. That's it. Sent a few folks to go check it out. I believe it was, you were talking about it the other day, Dorian. What was it? That show? No, with the extremely drugged-out gentleman and the dog that can kind of talk. Scooby-Woo? Scooby-Doo. The Mystery Machine. It's a cultural reference. I mean, I'm getting it right, aren't I? I swear to God, Dorian. All right. So, the real-life equivalent that Sigrid of the True North sent Shaggy and the gang and the Mystery Machine down to Chicago to go investigate who's killing elders. Mr. Reese could not get logged into this soon enough. Did I miss the questions of the audacity of physical relationships among corpses? You did not. I will get to that question. I'm not done browbeating and scandalizing the Prince of Chicago, whom, quite frankly, has proven on more than one occasion that this is sort of par for the course. I mean, earlier in that rant, she had the audacity to kill another standing member of the Camarilla. Now, as she is prince, and her word and authority are law within her domain, apparently she found some fault with this individual. I'm sure he had said something about how Canada was the real true North, and she was very upset by this, and then blood hunted him for some reason, and pummel, pummel, pummel. And of course, after that, well, Sigrid's nothing if not good with her fists. So we can say that Sigrid is probably good with her fists. So not just an elder prince of the Camarilla and prince of Montreal, but also some poor elder of the Camarilla who gave some unknown and assuredly minor offense, and gets pummeled, all under the auspices of I am prince and this is my rant. Wonderful. It was unaligned. Really, if we want to be serious about it, though, aren't the unaligned simply people who don't know they're in the Camarilla quite yet? No. Anything can be made possible. Admittedly, apparently, my information was a little spotty on that one. The rest of it is true, though. There was just so many people there that I'm sure that someone, somewhere, must have seen some offense, but unfortunately no one has ever come forward yet. Simply providing you the correct information. No, thank you, dear, thank you, I appreciate that. I would duly like to be corrected if I am mistaken. If any of my words ring with the absolute clarity of truth, well, please, inform me. I do like to know the truth as it is, but there again is a double-edged sword. So, basically, to recap, Sigrid allowed Elder Prince of Montreal to die while enjoying her hospitality. Sigrid, during rant, kills some poor schmuck for some reason, but I can easily say that her beast is riding her probably quite harder than anything has ever ridden something, or maybe Caligula as he rode that horse down the center of Rome. And I can tell you, he rode the horse, he didn't mount it from the saddle, but from the stump. As to the question that was raised about love affairs and physical relationships between, I believe the word you were looking for was kindred, I did address this in the first episode. For those of you who did not have the luck of catching me in my first episode, I can easily tell you that there is nothing more debased, disgusting, and unsavory than the idea of rutting. I mean, for good Lord. Now, if it's with another kindred, what elder in their right mind allows their childer to run around rutting like a bunch of wild beasts? It's disgusting. Why would you? To what avail? I mean, quite frankly, if you're that horny, there are other ways around it. And if you are that horny, I think your blood might be too thin to really be a kindred. I meant corpses are those with the blush of life and seemingly more attractive and mimic the kind. Oh, well, with those, that's perhaps, no, gross. All right, you're a kindred. You're above such base and carnal desires as thus. You are elevated, my dear. You have the blush of immortality and all the trappings that can come along with that. To degrade and debase yourself with physical relationships rutting like beasts. Unsavory. How will you while away the world and the roll of ages if you're constantly losing your lovers because you outgrew them? Quite literally. I came into the middle of this and have no idea what's going on, but it's awesome. So, see you, so you. See you, so you. Awesome to see you, so you. Wonderfully said. Someone should get you a thesaurus or a dictionary, because I think you're using words and you don't quite understand how. But thank you for your exclamation, your statement. Moving on. So, what else has been going down? Well, if we need to go all the way from Chicago across the great nation to Los Angeles, where, right now, Desmond Aldred is meeting with a great number of luminary elders, attempting to sort out the situation that happened in Chicago. But that's not the point. Who else lives in Los Angeles but one La Sombra Antitribu by the name of Roman? Now, rumor has it, and from reliably decent sources, said Roman left Los Angeles not too long ago and went to visit someone all the way on the East Coast. Now, who would take such a trip, you ask? What could there possibly be to gain? Well, if rumor has to be stood true, he went and met with another La Sombra. Now, it's no one I've ever heard of here in the Camarilla, and that makes one wonder. What sort of La Sombra might he be meeting with secretly all the way across the country? Now, I know a good assortment of La Sombra anarchs, and they are wonderful people once you get to know them. A little rough around the edges, but at their core, they are grace. But, to my knowledge, none of my anarch La Sombra friends have informed me of anyone living on the East Coast where Roman visited. So that really does make one wonder. Where would a La Sombra Antitribu go to visit another La Sombra that isn't in the Camarilla or the Anarchs? What does that leave, really? I cannot quite put my finger on it, or point a finger to make an accusation, but if I were to do so, I think we all know what's going on here. Shh. Don't tell him, he'll be furious to know. So, Chicago, LA. Where else have we heard? Oh, yes. Let's go to Dallas, Texas, shall we? Oh, here's a question, I think. A follow-up question to my first. Other than yourself and your line, what do you find beautiful? That makes me sound terribly arrogant, to think that I find myself and my lineage beautiful. I mean, we are, but that was verified by a third party. All right, it was completely scientific-ish. Sort of. That's not the point. The point is, what else besides that do I find beautiful? Well, I am a Toreador. It is my job, my purpose. It is my calling to find and create beauty in the world. But I find over the years that my mind wanders to previous people I knew, to kindred I had spent some time with. There are a great many things that I find beautiful. Not all of them widely understood. I mean, Do you ask if I find certain kindred beautiful or certain works of art beautiful? I may need you to narrow this down for me just a little. Anonymous writer, if you could clarify your question, go. Do powers of the blood work over the interwebs? No? Beauty in your world. In my world? I constantly surround myself with things that I find beautiful. My home has many works of art. I have chosen only the finest, most beautiful individuals to be ghouled and to serve me. I've kept art and antiques for ages, and I've collected it over many, many centuries. Many centuries. I've been able to acquire art from various places. Beauty in my life, besides my family and myself, what beauty did I find in my life? You know, there was one, actually, what stirs your soul? There was one, many years ago. She was this alabaster doll. Her skin was like porcelain or marble. She had the softest lips I'd ever known to that point in my life. And she had a kindness about her that I did not deserve, nor had I ever earned. But that was many, many years ago. And unfortunately, as so many things do in our life, in the long haul of centuries and years, things change. Friends and lovers move on or die. And we can best serve their memory in the way that we think that would make them proud. My lady was a warrior. And she fell in battle against the Sabbat. And I searched the desert for 2 days looking for her, or any sign of her. I never found her. But that is sadness, and you ask for beauty. Things that I find beautiful in my life, I tend to want to preserve so that I can share with others. Things that stir my soul are things that I wish to share with others. It is part of the reason I have become such a patron of the arts in my age. Not only does it stave off the ennui, but it gives me focus and practicality, and it helps me pass on knowledge that I've acquired over the many, many, many centuries to the younger generation. Lessons learned, tips and tricks that I can help with perfecting their art. These are the things that are important nowadays. These are the things that truly stir my soul, is to watch another creature build and create art, and then push their very essence into it. Whether it succeeds or fails, whether the statue stands or crumbles, whether the art is masterfully painted or done with crayon, is inconsequential. It is the process that is beautiful. It is the act of creating. asking for my great-grandsire, Diego Amador, how important is the boon system? Wonderful question. Do say hello to Diego for me. The boon system is the cornerstone of our economy. It is a cornerstone of both the Camarilla, and whether they'd like to believe it or not, the Anarchs as well. In fact, if it weren't for the boon system, I would dare say that the Camarilla, as well as the Anarch movement, would have crumbled into anarchy and chaos and self-destruction at this point, much like the Sabbat, who cannot be trusted to keep boons. It is literally a pillar of how we as a society regulate one another, much like we regulate each other's humanity to ensure that we are not lost to the depredations of our beasts, as we police one another in accordance with the masquerade and the accounting. It is one of the very foundations of our society, and someone who would disregard that, who would throw away that responsibility, I feel like that is a very sad creature indeed. Perhaps you should have her image sculpted. I'm assuming you're talking about my lady love many years ago. I don't think anyone could have cut marble to encapsulate her. I mean, Da Vinci, perhaps. But Michelangelo, undoubtedly. But there's no way that anyone could have embodied her in mere stone. She was so much more. Do you believe that the limitations of the traditions make us more or less free than the restrictions of the Anarch movement? There's a very interesting and somewhat scandalous question, but I will say what I have said before to others who have asked me similar things. Regardless of whether you adhere to the laws of Camarilla or the edicts of the Anarch movement, you are living, quite simply, in a gilded cage. The Anarchs would like to think that they are free, but I truly believe that if they looked at themselves and looked at what they do, they would realize that they're as bound as anyone, because true freedom, comes with a terrible burden of responsibility. A responsibility that comes with a terrible, terrible amount of danger. And there are few amongst us who are old enough, strong enough, to be able to burden themselves with that much freedom and danger and responsibility. And those that do, well, they're unaligned. There's an old word we used to use for that, not heard very often in these nights, because the connotation implies someone who can resist the influences of all sects and still stand on their own 2 feet, under their own power. They are truly free. The rest of us, we simply choose the gilded cage that we like best. The one with the golden bars, kept in a well-warmed home, where we are fed happily, we are allowed to sing and fight amongst ourselves. Or those that forget what it was like to be human. Those that long to reclaim that. But truly, none of us are truly free. And to say otherwise would be foolish. Everyone serves a master. And the ones that don't, who found a way to buck the system, walk away from it all, they bear a terrible burden. So many... Sterling, did someone feed the cat? What do you mean you didn't feed the cat? What do you mean he doesn't like albacore tuna? Well, then give him the yellowtail. I don't give a fuck if Emerald Lagasse is sleeping. Wake him up and make a meal. Love you, darling. Do you believe, let's see, he also asked for opinion on the importance, this is going back to Diego Amador, I assume. He also asked for the opinion of the importance of them across the country or around the world. My dear Diego, a boon is a boon. Regardless if it was made yesterday or 200 years ago, whether it was in Spain or South Africa or India, although why you would go that far east, I'm not entirely positive. It gets dicey when you go that far east. Regardless, a boon is a boon. Held throughout the ages, held importante immaculata. And if one does not adhere to the importance of the boon system and adhere to the boons that they make, then they make for themselves a very dangerous and uncomfortable bed. Cats like food, Mr. Sterling, or Miss Sterling as it is. Oh yes, it's a boy. Sterling is he's a Russian blue, so he's very gray. He kind of looks like sterling silver. I thought it was clever. Good Lord, I look good. Well, at any rate, it appears that our half hour has been up by about 17 minutes now. So, from all of us here at House Kensington, to all of you out there whispering around on your boxes, I would like to say thank you for joining me. I do hope I have been enlightening. I'm glad I was able to help you so thoroughly, dear. I'm not sure who you are, but it is a pleasure to know that I have helped someone. Regardless, I'm Lord Simon Kensington, Patriarch of House Kensington and Luminary of the Rose. And I hope to catch you again soon. Toodles.